the reason Go Giver connects with people is it does take we call it tension, right? We sort of want people to find their tension, this sort of unconventional wisdom behind it a little bit. Is that sort of like a thing that you sort of had been hearing and seeing, that kind of like people like, oh, you have a different view, that kind of like clicked with you?
I think I always heard that, and that was from when I wrote Endless Referrals too. Because
Hmm.
remember, the Go Giver is kind of Endless Referrals, the philosophy, right?
Right.
So Endless
Yeah.
Referrals is actually the how-to, in a sense, of the
Yeah.
Go Giver.
Before we begin today, a little bit of context about this conversation. This is a conversation that I had with Bob Burg, and it was recorded live inside of one of our classes. Now, Bob Burg is the co-author of The Go-Giver. It actually is one of the most gifted business books of the last decade. And what makes the work so powerful is how simple his philosophy is. Success comes from placing other people's interests first. In the session, Bob talks about why parables and stories just like The Go-Giver connect more deeply than how-to advice. He talks about how he thinks differently about writing titles that actually will sell, and why genuine relationships can never be growth hacked. We also get into the long game of book marketing, why launches matter much more so than sort of being hacky. And the consistency really does matter, and how books spread when readers feel seen inside the message. If you're writing a book that you want people to share, not just buy, then this conversation is certainly going to be worth your time. We've got a lot of authors who've had this desire to do a book for a long time, and this has given them kind of a nice time and place to do it. So
Yeah.
the hopeful thing, and we'll do something fun for you, is a bunch of authors in this process will send you their books so we can add some things to your bookshelf afterwards. We've helped inspire it a little bit here, which is great. So we're very grateful to have you for sure. Are you, I know you're like prolific here. Have you been working on anything new here during this time, or this quiet time, so to speak?
No, nothing in terms of writing, but I, continue to blog and post content everywhere. And we have my business partner Kathy and I have a online membership community that's going to be starting next week. So we're putting the finishing touches on that. So that's taken up the last 6 months or so. And
The Go Giver has been like one of my favorite books. I buy it and gift it to all my friends. The idea of giving things and return in value more than you take in payment is like something that I practice all the time because of your book. So it really changed my life as a business entrepreneur, just to see how to give more than you receive. So truly appreciate you for writing that book.
thank you. Very kind of you. I appreciate it. That means a lot to me.
The Go Giver book, which I think has been one that you described to me in our email about how transformative it was for you, of kind of expanding again the messages you had in this interesting way. Talk a little bit about like, why did parable books kind of strike you, and how has that sort of like writing kind of really spread the message even in such further ways than you may have ever thought?
Well, I mean, I think stories connect on a heart to heart level. There's an old Talmudic expression that says, "Words that come from the heart enter the heart,"
Hmm.
and I think stories do that.
Yeah.
And I've always found that parables, because I always enjoyed reading parables.
Yeah.
I've read tons of how-to books, and all my books that I wrote before and after the Go Giver were all how-to books. There's no question when you have a parable, a story, it connects on a deeper level, I think, than how to step one, step two, step three. And it makes the message more acceptable. That's how I always found when I was reading them, which is why I thought it would be a good idea to write one. But John David Mann, who's my co-author, he's the guy who was the lead writer. To me, anyone can write a how-to book because
Yeah.
what you know,
Yeah.
and we hope it's good information and it connects with people on that level, giving them information that they need, they want, they desire. But a parable is a different thing because it still
Yeah.
is a story. It's still a work of fiction. That's not my wheelhouse,
Hmm.
but it is John's. And so I was very glad that John decided to do that with me when I asked him to be the lead writer and storyteller. In fact, I have John, who is a magnificent writer. I just put down in the chat, I put his website, and to read some exceptional writing, excuse me, visit John's site and visit his blog, because even when he writes his blogs, you'll see the magnificent way he
Hmm.
pulls things together. I mean, he's a
Hmm.
pure writer, and you can see on his site, if you click on it, that he has co-authored books with a lot of different people, David Bach and Spencer Johnson and Brandon Webb and myself and others. And he also has it says in the upper right hand side, click for his free ebook, which he just wrote and published, and it's called How to Write Good, or at least gooder. I wanted him to say, or at least more gooder, but I think
More gooder.
Way out of.
I like it.
But he's just brilliant. So in terms of how to write, my goodness, I mean, Stephen King's book on writing was great, and there's other books that have certainly been written on that topic. I haven't read John's ebook on this yet. I have it in my thing to start reading as soon as I get a chance, because I know it's going to be entertaining and fantastic. But that's a pure writer. I'm an author in terms of I've had a lot of books published, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily the best writer in the world.
What did you see that you changed maybe in how you wrote differently to communicate differently? I mean, obviously all of your books have done quite well, but have you seen that there's a style that you've changed in terms of how you as a nonfiction author communicate and connect with your readers in nonfiction after having written in this way?
I think I've become a better writer for a couple of reasons. One is that the more you do of something, I mean, the better you're going to probably get.
We hope, right?
Yeah. And also because I've read more and I've written more, but also I think working with John has helped me a lot, because you see some of the things he does and how he kind of approaches the way he writes. And I think that's had a good effect on, he's been a good influence on me. The idea of what it's about. Okay. So I start out with the main, and you try to make the title a benefits oriented title, because you're in this case, you're writing for the reader to purchase it in order for them to get your message. Okay. So for example, my first book, Endless Referrals, which was basically on business networking, and the publisher wanted to call it Networking for Success or something like that. Well, people wanted to know how to network and people wanted success, but it was really just too plain. There was really nothing about that said a benefit. So I kind of start, as Stephen Covey has said in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, begin with the end in mind, right? And so my feeling was, well, what is it that the people who are my readers, which are salespeople and entrepreneurs, what did they really want? What's a big thing for them that they want that this book delivers? And it's referrals. Okay, that's a big thing in sales, obviously, and endless referrals. So referrals was the title. Okay. Now the subtitle is more descriptive. That gives you more of an idea of what it's. So network your everyday contacts into sales. Okay. So with adversaries into allies, it's with a title like that, it's basically telling you the benefit that you can take people who are normally not on your side and turn them into people who are on your side, right?
Yeah.
And then master the art of ultimate influence. The only thing I wish I changed was I wish I didn't call it ultimate influence. I wish I called it genuine influence, which is what John and I, in the last book in the Go-Giver series, the Go-Giver Influencer, we called it genuine influence. I think that's a better word, and it's more congruent with my brand too. I'm not that sophisticated, okay? but I will come up with a whole bunch of titles, and I'll put it to my brain trust, or I'll put it on Facebook or on LinkedIn, and I'll say, what do you think of this? Which do you like better? You can set up on some of those survey things. I can't remember the names of them, but you can actually do things where people can give you and then we'll limit it down to 3. And then out of those 3, I'm always going to make the final decision on it, because ultimately the responsibility is mine to come up with the title. But I'll tell you a title that didn't work and didn't sell, and then how it got changed and it did sell. Okay. And it just goes to show the title is so important. Yeah. After we wrote The Go-Giver, and then the publisher signed us to a 2-book contract after that, and one of them was Go-Givers Sell More, which that did very well also. But then the next book was going to be a book on basically leadership and influence and so forth, and we titled it "It's Not About You." And because we thought, okay, that's sort of from the third law of the Go-Giver,
Right.
the law of influence. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. So it's not about you. People who love the Go-Giver would grasp and so forth. People stayed away from that book in
Interesting.
absolute droves. It just did not sell. And the story was as good as the first one. So it should have, and I'm not bragging. I mean, I give the credit to that to John for his writing. And so it should have sold. And so it was obviously the title after a couple of years of figuring out why. I was talking with a friend of mine, Tom Ziegler, and I said, Tom, it's really funny. I said, it's beyond me. I said, I just don't understand why this book, especially when we had so many like real emotion-based fans of the Go-Giver, why this one, which was a follow-up, hasn't sold. And he said, well, the title, it's not about you. He said, I got to tell you, Bob, if I'm about to buy a book and it's not about me, I'm not really sure why I'd want to get it.
Right. Not the right move there.
Right. So not a good title. So we thought it was but we weren't looking at it from really the angle, what do I teach, right? That you should always be looking at it from the viewpoint of the buyer. It's about them. It's what they need, what they want.